Today, we're going to take a look at some high-quality German tools. Many of you will remember these Stahlwille 14 series wrenches because I showed in another video how I ordered them from the German Amazon site for $87, which is about half what they cost in the US. I'll put a link to that video in the description. I would have liked a plain old 10mm to 19mm set, but they don't offer one. This set is close. It goes from 8 to 19, and it skips the 9 and the 15. I've been using these around my garage for the last couple months, anytime I need a metric wrench. Here are just a couple examples. There are some things I like about these, but there are also some ways they could be improved. So let's start with the good stuff. It's clear to me after thoroughly looking these over that they have very tight quality control on these. So what do I mean by that? For example, I was looking to see if there are any flaws on the wrenches under the chrome that were then chromed over. I did not see any significant nicks or scratches, just a couple tiny little nicks on a couple wrenches, which is normal. Another thing they did very well, look at the letters here. On this wrench, all the letters and numbers are forged into the wrench. They're not stamped in like we would see on most other wrenches. And you can see all the words are cleanly and nicely done. The chrome is quite consistent. These have satin chrome. It's kind of a personal preference, but I really like satin chrome. I mean, I don't dislike fully polished wrenches. I have this one right here. But with satin chrome, it doesn't get all scratched up looking. And for a functional reason, if your hand is really greasy, these are going to be less slippery than your typical polished wrench. For those of you who don't know how a combination wrench is made, it would be forged as a blank, and then the open end and the box end would be broached, and that's how they reach the correct sizing on the open and the box end. When we look in there, we see the broaching was cleanly done, and it was nicely finished after they broached it. I grabbed a few other wrenches here off the wall for a comparison. We have over here a Craftsman, another Craftsman that's a little rougher, you can see there, then the Stahlwille here, and over here is a Williams, a brand made by Snap-on, an industrial brand. And check out in the open end, after they were broached, the Stahlwille was clearly finished much better than the others. The Stahlwille wrenches do just have a plain open end, you can see it there. I have for comparison here a Proto ASD, and you can see the ridge there in the open end to help grab the bolt. Having a plain open end like this has pluses and minuses. On the minus side would be it might not grab the head of the bolt or a nut as well as an open end that has teeth or grooves on it. On the plus side, a smooth open end like this also won't mar fasteners as easily. An open end with teeth in it can often leave marks on the fastener. So if you're working on like a show car engine or something with polished fasteners and you're worried about that, then you'd want a smooth open end. I personally never work on anything like that, so I am not worried about leaving marks on the head of a bolt. Like pretty much any high-quality tool, this has a modified box end design, which helps prevent rounding off stuck nuts or bolts as easily. It does that by taking the pressure off the very corner of the bolt and moving it more towards the center of the flat part of the nut or bolt. We can tell it has that because it has kind of this rounded profile on the teeth here in the box end. You know, we could talk all day long about how the wrenches look, but I didn't buy them to look at them. I bought them to use them. So how do they work? Having used them around my garage for the last couple months, I really like them. The main difference you're going to see here between the Stahlwille wrenches and your typical American combination wrench is here on the box end, how it's designed. This is kind of a shallow offset box end versus the typical American wrench, which would just have a 15-degree offset there. And I like this because it gives you a little more access than your typical American wrench, but it's not so bulky. Like something like this, a deep offset wrench, I mean, this is handy in some situations, but it's just too big for a lot of situations as well. This is kind of a good middle ground. It can get you some different access than the average wrench you might have laying around, but it's not so bulky that it won't fit in places. Here's the tray they came in, and I gotta say it's sturdier than I was expecting. It's a two-piece design, this molded plastic part on the top and this secondary part on the back. So if you were going to store these in the tray in a toolbox drawer, I think that this would last for quite a while. There's another thing about these wrenches that's not necessarily good or bad, but is just kind of weird. I have them all lined up here, and if you have a sharp eye, you will notice that the 11mm and the 12mm are the exact same length. I've owned some other wrench sets where this was the case, but it was for a different reason, and I'm a little perplexed why they did that with these Stahlwille wrenches. According to the Stahlwille catalog, both these wrenches are 180 millimeters long. Like I said before, I've run into situations on other wrenches where two wrenches shared the same length and it was a cost-cutting move. But I don't think that's the case here, and I'll tell you why. On other wrench sets, they might use this as a cost-cutting move because it cuts down on the number of forging dies they would have. So in that case, you'd have a die, you'd stamp out a bunch of blanks, and you would broach some of them to 11mm and some of them to 12mm, and there you just saved money because you used the same blank and you got two different sizes of wrenches. And you didn't have to buy two different forging dies. But I don't think that's what they did here, and there's a couple reasons why. There are some differences in the dimensions of the wrenches other than the length, and as we talked about before, all the words and the numbers are forged into the wrench. We can see here, they're not just stamped in afterwards. So that makes me think that they have different forging dies for these. So the question is then, if it doesn't save money to make these the same length, why did they do it? And the answer is, I have no idea because it does not make sense to me. If you're going to have separate dies, why not just make these two wrenches a little bit different in length? I also wish these Stahlwille wrenches were marked a little more clearly. I grabbed a few wrenches to compare. On the right and on the Proto here, you can see they are marked on each end of both sides. The Craftsman is marked on the open end and the box end on one side, and on the other end, just on the box end. On the Stahlwille wrenches, I gotta admit, I get a little confused grabbing them sometimes because these are 14 series wrenches. That's what the 14 is. And this marking here is the size. So it's marked 13mm there on the open end and the same on this side, 13mm on the open end, nothing here on the box end. But when I'm grabbing them, I sometimes see this 14 and think I'm grabbing the 14mm wrench. I just wish on the Stahlwille they would put the size marking on both ends and on both sides. So if you're dense like me, you wouldn't see this 14 and get confused about the size. Another thing that I don't love about these wrenches is the length. These are Stahlwille's long pattern wrenches, but they really aren't that long. And to show you, I grabbed some other wrenches here off my wall, including a couple classic USA-made Craftsman wrenches, which we're all familiar with. Yes, the Craftsman wrenches are now made in China, but I have a couple USA-made ones here because that's what I had. Let's start out with some 14mm wrenches. Obviously the Craftsman here, Stahlwille, and this is a Proto ASD, Proto's anti-slip design, which is their long pattern wrench. We can see in this size, the Stahlwille is a decent bit longer here than the Craftsman and is only a smidge shorter than the Proto ASD. Here are some 19mm wrenches. I've got the Craftsman here, and I marked out the length of a snap-on and Proto wrench. I don't have a 19mm Proto ASD, but it's 280mm, as is the snap-on OEX series 19mm, which is their, regular long pattern wrench series. We see here the Stahlwille still is a decent bit longer than the Craftsman, but it's also a decent bit shorter than the Proto ASD and the snap-on. So again, these Stahlwille long pattern wrenches are just not that long. That's not to say that these Stahlwille wrenches are short, because they're not. Here's another 19mm comparison. And I also drew out here the length of a 19mm right grip wrench. Right is a high quality brand of industrial tools, and we can see here that the Stahlwille is longer than the right. So how do these compare in price to some other brands? If I was smart, I would have gotten the slower shipping and only paid $73, but I paid $87. There aren't super comparable sets to these, but a 10 to 19mm set of Proto ASD wrenches is about $140 on Amazon. A right set is $108 plus shipping at Harry Epstein, which is a really cool tool store. A Snap-on set lists for about $395. And a set of the new Chinese Craftsman wrenches would come in around $30 on sale. So in the end, am I happy with these? Would I buy them again? The answer is yes. These are made in a first world country, if that matters to you. I do like that. They're very nicely finished and they appear well made. I also like this offset box end design, and these were a super bargain for what you get. But they aren't perfect. I do wish they were a little bit longer, and I wish the sizes were more clearly marked. And it looks like I may be forfeiting warranty coverage by buying these from outside the US. That's what the official Stahlwille distributor in the US told me. I suspected that might be the case, and I'm okay with that, because it's pretty hard to break a wrench. So what do you think about these? Let me know in the comments down below.